This is a month after Nixon resigned and Gerald Ford is president. And some of you may remember this. He went on television on a Sunday morning and announced he was giving Nixon a full pardon for Watergate. And of course, he went on television early on a Sunday morning hoping people would not notice. But it was noticed, but not by me. I was asleep. And my colleague, Carl Bernstein, called me up and said, "Have you heard?" And I said, I was asleep. I haven't heard anything. Carl truly has and still has the ability to say what occurred with the fewest words and the most drama. And he said the following: "The son of a bitch pardoned the son of a bitch." And and so I was able to decode that, and I was proud of myself. I figured what had happened, and I thought, it's perfect. It's the final corruption of Watergate. Nixon, who's in charge of all this stuff, and gets a pardon. 40 people go to jail. Hundreds of careers are wrecked, and so forth. And I thought that, and if you look in the '76 election, Carter beat Ford because of suspicions that there was a deal in the pardon. Anyway, 25 years later, I undertook one of my book projects, a book called Shadow, about looking dispassionately, hopefully, at the legacy of Watergate in the presidencies of Ford through Clinton. And I called Ford up and said, "I want to interview you about the pardon." And I was sure he wouldn't talk. But this is, again, preconceptions don't work. Turned out to be the most open person I think I've ever dealt with as a journalist. I interviewed him time and time again. I had this luxury of time getting the legal memos, reading the contemporary coverage, and realized and kept going back to him and saying, what happened? And finally, last interview at his home in Rancho Mirage, he said, "I'm going to tell you." And he said, Al Haig, who was Nixon's chief of staff, came and offered a deal and said, "If you promise you'll pardon Nixon, he will resign." And then Ford said to me, he said, "But I rejected that deal. I knew I was going to become president. Nixon was finished, and it would be corrupt." And then what you try to do as a reporter and rarely get close to is go into someone's mind. And Ford said, "I want to tell you exactly what I was thinking. The economy was in trouble. We were in the middle of the Cold War." He said he had a letter from the Watergate prosecutor saying Nixon was going to be investigated as a private citizen, would surely be indicted, tried, go to jail. We'd have 2 or 3 more years of Watergate. And Ford, in this very plaintive but moving, real way, said, "I needed my own presidency." And so I wrote in the book what I thought was corrupt was actually gutsy, and Caroline Kennedy and Teddy Kennedy gave Gerald Ford the Profiles in Courage Award that year for pardoning Nixon. And I remember watching that, and what a cold shower, to be honest, what a humiliation, because I was sure it was corrupt. And then you subject it to 25 years of history, you subject it to a kind of neutral inquiry, and you realize what was corrupt was actually courage.